Becky Savage lost 2 sons on the same day to accidental overdoses, and in the wake of that has started the 525 Foundation, which helps to educate teens and families about the growing problem. Becky, we should point out 525, of course, those were your son's hockey numbers.
Yes. Jack was number 5 and Nick was number 25.
It's unimaginable, I think, for most people to lose a child, certainly to lose children on the same day. And they were, you know,
good kids.
Teenagers, good kids, drinking a little bit after a high school graduation, which, let's be honest, lots of kids do. But then it went a little further.
Right.
What happened?
They were at a graduation party, and somebody had brought a prescription pill bottle to the party and had been distributing them at the party. And they made a choice, probably under the influence of alcohol, to take one of the pills. And they took the pill. They came home later that night. They checked in with me. I knew they were home, and they went into the kitchen and started making food, which was bagels and cream cheese. And I went upstairs and turned my light off and went to bed.
But I mean, here's what's so important, too, that I really want people to hear is they came, they checked in with you.
They did.
You looked them in the eye. You're a nurse. You know, you knew your kids had been out. They were making a snack. But there was nothing else that raised a red flag.
There was no indication that raised a red flag that anything could be wrong.
And then when did you know?
So the next morning, I was collecting laundry, doing normal household chores that I do in the weekends, you know, fun way to spend a weekend. But I was in Jack's room, and I was picking up laundry out of his room, talking to him, actually. Jack, it's time to get up. Dad has things he wants help with today, and didn't really get a response from him, so I walked over and went to shake him, and he was unresponsive. I'm a nurse, and I knew to check his pulse and respirations, which there were none. So I immediately started CPR on Jack, and ran to get my phone, call 911. In the meantime, I'm calling for Nick as I'm running back upstairs to continue CPR on Jack. And one of Nick's friends came upstairs because they had been sleeping in the basement. He had brought some friends over for an overnight. And at that point, I didn't know that there was anything wrong with Nick. But I didn't realize that they had also called 911 in the basement because they had went to get Nick up to come help me, and he was unresponsive as well.
And so all of this, it's tough to find the words.
It's a nightmare.
It is a
nightmare.
nightmare.
It's a nightmare that it's hard to deal with every day.
Because it never goes away.
It never goes away.
And then I'm sure you too, you turn on the stories on the news, and there are constantly stories about the opioid crisis and how it touches every single segment of the population. How tough is it for you to see that on television?
It's tough, and to see. It's kind of encouraging, though, to see that there is so much spotlight on it, that people are starting to become more aware of what's going on. Because 2.5 years ago, when the boys passed away, I cannot say that I ever talked with them about prescription drug abuse and what to look for. And it never crossed my mind that they would take a prescription drug that did not belong to them. We did talk to them about alcohol and drinking and taking street drugs, but it never crossed our mind to talk to them about prescription drugs. Now that I go around to schools and I talk to kids, you know, I realize that this is a big issue with kids in school, and it's readily available to them. It's, you know, a babysitter could take it out of somebody's medicine cabinet. I mean, it's very accessible to kids, and that's where I think that the abuse is stemming from, the accessibility.
Also, you know, can also be prescribed to them. I mean, I've mentioned this before on the show, but my 7-year-old hurt his wrist earlier this summer, and they wrote him out a prescription, which we didn't fill. But there's that disconnect too. So you're going around, you're talking to schools, you're talking to parents.
Anybody who'll listen.
What's the response been?
The response has been awesome. Usually after when I start talking to students, it's dead silent. When I show them pictures of Nick and Jack, just to connect with them that they were normal kids, just like they are. And then I start telling the story that they both died on the same night, and then the crowd just goes quiet. Then I go into talking about making good choices and being a good friend. And if something like this does happen, that you don't leave a friend behind and you do the right thing. There are laws, I know in a lot of states, it's called the Lifeline Law, that most of it covers alcohol, underage drinking, but I think some of them are starting to cover prescription drug abuse, which is good. I try to let kids know about that so that if somebody is in danger, that they do stay with them and get the necessary help, and then they won't be in trouble either. They'll be immune from being in trouble. So these are just simple things I'm trying to get them to be aware of,
Right.
and to do the right thing. When I talk to parents, I talk to them about educating them about getting rid of prescription drugs that are expired or not being used anymore, and disposing of them properly so that we can, you know, kind of get unnecessary medications off the streets.
Do you think there's enough awareness in Washington? We hear from lawmakers on all sides of the aisle about how important this is to them, and we know that there can be a lot of gridlock in Washington. Do you feel that there is enough support, though, for real change?
I think they're starting to be more, because I think people are really starting to realize that it is a problem and it's affecting everybody. It's not just a stereotype of person that you would think that could be affected by this. It can happen to anybody. It can, you know, affect everybody. It's sad to think that everybody at some point in your life will probably know somebody that's been affected by this epidemic, which is a sad.
It's very sad. Your two surviving sons are 18 and 14.
They are.
Let's end on an upbeat note. How do
Yes.
you want us to remember your sons, who were both captains of the hockey team, right? Numbers 5 and 25. What's the conversation that you all have as a family that make you laugh and make you smile as you remember things they did?
Sure. Well, they were goofballs. We had talked about Matthew, when we were on the airplane here, we had talked about, you know, how can we describe them? And Matt goes, they were great, you know, and he goes, they're goofballs. But they were very thoughtful and kind. And then we talked about what kind of a legacy we can leave in their names, and that talking to people and bringing awareness to it is going to save people's lives. And Nick and Jax is going to help. They're going to help us do that. So.
Do you find some strength in them? Because this is not an easy thing for you to talk about.
This is not an easy thing to do, but I know that those boys were going to amount to something big, and they still are, even though they're not here with us today.
Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate you taking the time for us.
Thank you.
And again, it is the 525 Foundation, so be sure to check that out.